Black Lives Matter protesters in Salt Lake City may be facing the possibility of life in prison for vandalism. So now, what's going on is there's been protests in Salt Lake City for quite some time, at least since July, early July. And as a result, several protesters had been accused of splashing paint and breaking windows of the district attorney's building. So now, that same prosecutor, that same district attorney, is now using gang laws to try to get these people sentenced to life in prison. That is definitely insane. So let me give you the details here. According to the Associated Press, the charges of simple vandalism have more severe consequences because Salt Lake City District Attorney Sim Gill upgraded them with something called a gang enhancement, which increases penalties for offenses committed in concert with two or more persons or in relation to a criminal street gang. Black Lives Matter protesters are not a street gang. Sorry, but that's not their protesters. Look, that's like it's basically going back to like imagine King George calling the Tea Party protesters, right? The ones who actually dumped the tea in the harbor. They did vandalism, okay? Calling them a gang and saying, well, you know, we should throw you in prison for life. Of course. That's exactly what it is. And actually, dumping that tea did a lot more damage than these protesters did. Not that I'm saying that the damage they didn't do was significant. It's about $50,000 worth of damage, so it is. But life in prison for that? Really? Now, prosecutors are saying that the charges are justified because they work together to cause thousands of dollars in damages, right? And so with the enhancement, second-degree felony charges, they usually have a sentence of 1 to 15 years. They can be upgraded to life in prison, which again is absolutely insane. Now, one of the protesters is 28-year-old Madalena McNeil, who, according to arrest records, was charged with felonies of criminal mischief and rioting for buying a can of paint at Home Depot. That's what she did. Oh, and also allegedly shoved a police officer during a protest. So I'm assuming as a result of that shove, that police officer suffered serious bodily harm. No, actually not. They did not suffer a large amount of bodily harm as a result. And again, she bought the paint, right? And so, well, I hate that paint was used. And so obviously she must be part of a gang. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing here. Records claim McNeil bought red paint from a Home Depot, again, and shoved police officer during a protest, according to the cops. And again, that is supposed to be worth life in prison now? Is that what that? No. What this is overcharging, obviously, and intimidation. It's not gang violence, right? I mean, look, did they smash windows? And did they throw paint? Yes, that's vandalism. That's property damage. Nobody's saying that shouldn't go unpunished, right? You get a fine, you pay the damages. Or you should have to clean it up yourself. Perfectly fine. Perfectly symmetrical, right? But apparently we've got somebody in the chat that says shoot them, right? You're a sociopath, by the way. If you think that that's worth taking another person's life, you literally value property more than people's lives. That makes you a sociopath. Just saying. Terrible, terrible people. And so, no, what you should have is a punishment that fits the crime. And so that's what our justice system is actually modeled off of, is justice, proportional justice. And so, yes, fines, making them clean up their own mess, and, probation, that sounds reasonable. If you're a psycho, then shooting them or throwing them in life in prison, that's what you would go to, right? And so that's the thing. And by the way, there's no evidence that she herself actually destroyed property. Now, McNeil did spend Tuesday night in jail, okay, and has been released, right? And she said KOTV that she didn't do anything wrong other than buy the paint, but said it would look silly at the potential of life in prison and not be scared, okay? Um, and so, yeah, there you go. Gil, for his part, said that he's just using it to cop pleas to lesser accounts, but still, that's some bullshit, right? Unacceptable, I think. It's extremely excessive, and it's part of police intimidation. It's literally state-sanctioned violence. You don't see the police that were beating peaceful protesters in Portland get charged with life in prison, right? No, it's because they have qualified immunity, right? We literally set it up so that the police officers, they can do essentially almost whatever they want and get qualified immunity for it. But unfortunately, if you splatter paint or if you run into a police officer in a way that they don't like, well, they can throw you in prison or potentially throw you in prison for life. That's what that is. Now, Gil's charges, of course, did not go over well, right? And so, for example, here you have, let's see, Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall saying, quote, the potential punishment facing some protesters is excessive. While I believe there should be consequences for breaking the law, as I agree with, right? The potential to spend life in prison for buying paint is too severe. 100%. The Salt Lake Tribune also reported that many have accused the district attorney of filing excessive charges because the broken windows and splattered paint were part of his office building and the surrounding area. Oh, so retaliation, basically. According to the newspaper, 7 people have been charged with first-degree felonies for allegedly helping buy, transport, or help splatter the paint in the street, or for breaking windows. Which, by the way, why isn't anybody charging Umbrella Man with this? Oh, right, because he's a white nationalist. He's been, no, not white nationalist. He's been outed as a white supremacist. I wonder if anybody's going to go after Umbrella Man for smashing windows with a life sentence. Probably not. Probably not, because he's not on the side of Black Lives Matter. And that's also what it comes down to. They don't like Black Lives Matter, and so they will be retaliatory, and they will crush protests the harshest way that they can. And so back to Gil, right? A lot of people, attorneys for the defendants and people in the community are saying the guy's just upset that you messed up his nice office building. Oh, well, that's definitely what it seems like. And look, understand, I'd be upset too. Well, of course, right? They were upset about that, but these retaliatory, over excessive sentences are just ridiculous. And that is the problem, right? And so, look, if you're a prosecutor, you've got discretion. And they should use that discretion to give a proportional punishment, right? I mean, back off the life sentence, right? Go with a misdemeanor. Go with some community service. Do something like that, because understandably, most protesters are not in favor of smashing windows or doing vandalism, right? They want to protest peacefully against injustice, right? But when the when the DA decides to use his power to try to basically punish people for something against himself, okay, that proves the point that maybe the justice system is a little too punitive and needs major reforms. And so you might want to think about dialing it down, Gil, and maybe make a better case for yourself.